Hey YouTube, welcome back. Today we're diving into Tomodachi Life Living the Dream and exploring some of the subtle differences the game appears to have between regions. So if you're excited to learn more about this life sim and what you can expect in your region, be sure to leave a like on the video as it helps out a bunch. And let's jump straight in.
Did you want to talk?
Now, after more than 10 long years, Nintendo finally revealed the long-awaited sequel to Tomodachi Life called Tomodachi Life Living the Dream. This was announced earlier this year in a Nintendo Direct for Nintendo Switch, which I'm sure you'll be glad to know, especially if you're not looking to upgrade to the Nintendo Switch 2 just yet. Now already there are a few obvious differences that players will experience between regions, such as the EU versus the US for example, but quickly for those that don't know, Tomodachi Life is essentially a life sim that you're more or less watching rather than controlling. It's a weird and wonderful game filled with Miis that you create and trade, but you basically watch their lives play out and sometimes help them along the way. There's quirky minigames with prizes, weird dream interactions, friendships and fallings out. It's actually hard to describe just how entertaining it is if you've never played it. And if that wasn't enough to intrigue you, you can customize their rooms, change their clothes and feed them. It's pretty adorable. Now, since the reveal of Tomodachi Life Living the Dream back in the spring, we've been given a second trailer showcasing the game in a little more detail, slowly introducing us to what this specific version of Tomodachi Life will offer Nintendo Switch fans. We get a better look at the facilities and houses, we get our first preview at forcing Miis to interact with each other for example, and lots more. It's actually a super exciting time to be a Tomodachi Life fan, or a fan of cozy life sims in general for that matter. I can't stress how big this game is going to be by the way, so you'll just have to take my word for it. Anyway, although we're only 2 trailers into Tomodachi Life Living the Dream, and we've now seen the basics, we are probably only scratching the surface of what the game will offer.
How refreshing.
But despite this, some differences between regions can already be spotted when you compare these early trailers. And I'm not talking about how they use different Miis in different trailers or how the different Miis have their different portraits visible in their rooms, because that's just a customization thing and could easily be replicated in all regions. And I'm not talking about how the UI is seen in some regional trailers and not others. That's just an editing thing when making the trailers and doesn't reflect the final release of the game. And I'm also not talking about every region's trailer having the fart sound, except the US's for some reason. What's up with that? I'm talking about actual differences that players will have in their copies of Tomodachi Life Living the Dream based on where it's released and played. Now naturally at this stage, given we're only 2 trailers in and still don't really know what the full concept or story of the game is, there's only a couple of regional differences to highlight at the moment. The first and probably the least exciting, to be honest, I'm not gonna lie, is the on-screen text and certain labels that correspond to a Mii's personality when creating them. For example, the attitude aspect of a Mii's personality in the UK is referred to as the thinking aspect in the US. Similarly, when looking at the low end of these scales, the direct, intense and relaxed ranks here in the UK are called honest, varied and chill in the US. Obviously it's difficult to compare the Japanese region given the language barrier, but I'm pretty sure they are more on par with the European descriptions. Anyway, we also have different text for the UI, such as Anne's personality versus set Anne's personality, and even how OK is spelled on the button. What's more is we see the same thing when creating a Mii's voice too. The rise and fall and the melody of a Mii's voice in the UK and PAL regions is referred to as delivery and tone in the US. Anyway, before we get into the more interesting ones, this isn't a new thing. In fact, it was the same in the previous versions of Tomodachi Life on 3DS, where different ranks use different terminology, presumably to feel more natural and accurate to the respective regions. Anyway, moving on to a more interesting regional difference now that is less about on-screen differences and more about how the Miis actually speak English in their stylish text-to-speech speech.
How refreshing.
The first is how Miis will pronounce things in their given region and how their text-to-speech adjusts the phonetic vowel quality, I think is the proper term.
I can't wait to start living here.
As you heard, Miis in the English PAL versions, which include at least the UK and Australia, will of course say, I can't wait to start living here, with Miis in the US using a more common and local pronunciation to that region.
I can't wait to start living here.
So that's pretty cool. Now, thanks to the second Tomodachi Life Living the Dream trailer, we also have a second example of this regional difference. In the UK, a Mii can be seen saying, I'm absolutely ravenous,
I'm absolutely ravenous.
when highlighting how hungry they are. Whereas in the US, for example, the Mii is seen saying, I'm so hungry.
I'm so hungry.
So it appears that this type of dialogue has been adjusted in different versions with the respective region in mind somehow. And again, as a bonus regional difference, some more subtle regional differences include the labeling of the favorites UI, such as all-time favorites in the UK versus loves in the US, and so on. Of course, in the grand scheme of things, these are very small and subtle differences, although given these mirror some of the differences we've seen in the past, I do expect to discover even more when future trailers drop or when Tomodachi Life Living the Dream finally launches in spring 2026. But the big question is, will we see any content differences outside of UI labels and accents?
Glad that was only a dream.
At this stage, we don't know, although I highly doubt it. In past versions of Tomodachi Life, Japanese versions did have exclusive items, for example, such as treasures and prizes that weren't available in other regions, but that was in an era of gaming when games didn't have worldwide releases and launched months apart in different regions. The world is a smaller place today, games launch worldwide everywhere, and it's just not as common to offer different content to different regions anymore. We saw this with New Horizons, but I guess anything's possible with Tomodachi Life Living the Dream, so time will tell. Anyway, even at this stage and with these small regional differences we have seen, the reason I find it so fascinating is because you just would never know unless you compared these side by side. And honestly, the fact developers go to these lengths to mold a game a little bit closer to the region it's played in is pretty cool.
Oh my.
Please post life in the comments if you made it to this point in the video, and be sure to include whether or not you're excited for Tomodachi Life Living the Dream. I'd love to know. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
When is the game coming out?